Hi everyone, welcome back. This week we're talking about character and how to put people into our writing and how to make them feel like people. For me, the most important thing to keep in mind when you're writing about people and trying to write characters into your work is to, um, I guess it's just to think of them as actual people. I think writing good characters and being successful at putting characters in your work requires this outlook on just human beings and people that is sort of generous and curious and full of empathy. So you need to sort of see the people in the world as people that are one of a kind, um, that have sort of histories and backstories and depth, and that have sort of genuine feelings and thoughts that are worthy of sort of I guess analysis and exploration. That's not to say that there's no room in our writing for flat characters that don't do anything or do like one thing and that's it. We'll see some of those. But for our main characters, sort of the people that poems are centered on, J. Alfred Prufrock, or the characters in our short stories, um, it requires this sort of empathy of asking, all right, who are you? And what is it that you want, and how can I help understand that and get you what you want, dear character? So let's look at some ways that, sort of in that spirit, characters can be actually evoked or revealed. I guess revealed is the best way to think about it. You can just sort of say, here's a list of like sort of demographic data. This person was an 18-year-old woman. She grew up in Tuscaloosa. She goes to the University of Alabama and this. And you can just sort of explain that. But that doesn't really get us the feel of a person. It's like we're just being told that here's this idea out there. So what instead of just listing who people are, finding ways to have characters reveal themselves to the readers is kind of the goal here. Because this is the way we meet people, in our real lives. We're not really given full dossiers up front. We have to sort of figure out who people are based on a series of things. For instance, let's start with image. It's one of the first things we see, right? What does a person look like? We shouldn't generalize about their personality, but it's one way that we can. So what you do is you use similes and metaphors to compare, I should say, or equate people. Two objects or animals is whatever. It's like basically you're just taking the strange, which is your character, and finding a way to compare it or equate it to something familiar. Okay, using similes and metaphors. It's one way to evoke that image of the character. The other one is just to use straight sensory detail to evoke their physical look and wardrobe. What's their hair look like? Their skin tone, their clothes, their physical body shape. And putting some of these things at odds with one another is how you can create interesting characters. Here's an example from the poem we're reading for Tuesday, Eliot's The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock. And when I am formulated, sprawling on a pin, when I am pinned and wriggling on the wall, then how should I begin to spit out all the butt ends of my days and ways? And then later in the poem, he writes, I should have been a pair of ragged claws scuttling along the floors of silent seas. So you have these moments in the poem, and we'll talk about why, that Prufrock sees himself as this sort of insect, this collected, wriggling insect, or this sort of small bottom-dwelling crab-like thing in the ocean. And that gives us a sense of, if not what he looks like, it does kind of, at least what kind of person we're dealing with here. We're not dealing with a shark, or like a butterfly. And then this is also in the O'Connor story, reading A Good Man is Hard to Find. Bailey didn't look up from his reading, so she's the grandmother, wheeled around then and faced the children's mother, a young woman in slacks whose face was as broad and innocent as a cabbage and was tied around with a green headkerchief that had 2 points at the top like rabbit ears. It's not the most flattering portrait of the children's mother, who doesn't even get a name in the whole story, as you'll see. You've got this cabbage face. Broad and innocent is nice, but just a sort of flat, cabbage face. And then the sort of bunny ears image, just has this kind of infant of a mother. And that's the image. That's the first image of her that we get. And so that's in our heads, and that sort of gives us a way to read the character as the story develops. So again, look at ways, here's animals. They're good. They're good ways to describe people, or cabbages, nouns of all sorts. Okay, the next thing you could do is characters action, which is to say you can just have people reveal themselves by what they do. We can watch people act in certain ways and then use that as an indicator of behavior and personality. From Eliot, this is a weird passage where he tries to make a character out of the night, right, or this sort of this landscape that Prufrock is imagining, and you can see what the action reveals about the character of the night, or the fog, I guess. The yellow fog that rubs its back upon the window panes, the yellow smoke that rubs its muzzle on the window panes, licked its tongue into the corners of the evening, lingered upon the pool that stands and drains. Oh man, I didn't do any of this. Good lord. That should be pools. Anyway, lingered upon the pools that stand in drains, let fall upon its back the soot that falls from chimneys, slipped by the terrace, made a sudden leap, and seeing that it was a soft October night, curled once about the house and fell asleep. Little trivia, Eliot wrote a book of poems that became the lyrics for the musical Cats, and is, for whatever reason, a really good observer and writer about cats. So you can see, I mean, as soon as you've got, like, rubs its back and its muzzle and its tongue and all this stuff, he just makes the fog into this cat that sort of slinks around this landscape through the action. It's all verbs. Lots of great verbs here. In the O'Connor story, this is a detail. A lot of these action stuff have nothing to do with the plot, right? It's not like characters that I'm going to do this to forward the plot, you know, in ways toward our climax. This moment in the O'Connor story is completely irrelevant, except that it reveals so much about who the grandmother is, which is to say, sort of this weird kind of anal retentive lady that nobody likes. Bailey and the children's mother and the baby sat in front. This is when they're in the car, and they left Atlanta at 8:45 with the mileage on the car at 55,890. The grandmother wrote this down because she thought it would be interesting to say how many miles they had been when they got back. You know, it's the sort of thing that I would do too, but that's the kind of person I am. It's like, oh, I've got some facts to give you that make me look right and important. And that's totally the grandmother in this story, that she wants to be the center of attention and she wants to always give information to people that people should be happy to receive.